Hi guys, welcome back to the third and final episode of the basics of ant keeping. In the previous two episodes, we firstly looked at finding a queen ant and raising her. Then we looked at what to do when she had successfully raised her first workers. If you didn't manage to catch those episodes, I will leave a link for them down below in the description. But in this episode, we will be going over what to do when your young colony finally outgrows their test tube setup. Now, when thinking about ants, it is easy to think of them as many single individuals. But in reality, ants act like a single organism. You can compare the growth of a colony to the growth of a person. The beginning stages, for example, where the queen is founding her colony, could be compared to an infant, young and inexperienced. And much like the infant relying on their parents, the queen's first workers rely on her and her stored body fats to get through the founding stage. After this, the colony and the workers become more self-sufficient, foraging for food and bringing it back to the nest for the next generation. You could compare this stage to a child learning to eat for the first time. And as time goes on, the colony grows in size, and so too does a person. And this brings me back to the basics of ant keeping, as your young colony would have finally grown up and, much like a young adult, would now be ready to leave the nest or founding chamber. Now, you may be thinking, how do I determine when I need to move my ants out of their test tube? Well, you need to look at the available space in your test tube. If it seems like the ants have occupied all of the space the test tube has to offer, it is a good indicator that they need a new home. Now, to accommodate this exponential growth, you will need to firstly acquire a new setup for your ants, one that can house its current size and perhaps any further potential growth. There are so many types of setups out there, like natural nests, YTONG nests, and acrylic nests. I can understand, as a first-time ant keeper, it can be a bit confusing, and you may be left wondering, what is best for my ants? Well, firstly, you need to address how you would like to view your ants. With a natural nest, you will be allowing your ants to dig down like they would in the wild. This is good if you want to replicate their natural behaviour, but it means you sacrifice viewing their nesting activities. If you are like me and you want to watch both their nesting and foraging activities, then you will need something along the lines of a YTONG or acrylic nest. These are easily acquirable on the ant keeping market. You can simply Google YTONG or acrylic ant nest for sale, and many different ant shops will appear with their own designs. If you are happy to buy an ant nest online, then be sure to pick one that's relatively small. The way I work it out is I try and imagine all of my ants in the nest, but then enough room for them to double in size. You don't want a nest too big, otherwise your ants will start to use parts of it as a dumping ground for rubbish, which could generate a deadly amount of mould. But if you are on a budget, you can have a go at making your own nest. I have created a few tutorials in the past on how to do this. If you wish to check them out, I will leave a link for my nest building playlist in the description. After you have built or bought your new nest, you'll need to start thinking about a foraging area. I personally still like to use the original foraging area, but once again, like the nest, you guys can buy a purpose-built one online or make your own. If, like me, you want to use the original foraging area, it is a case of firstly closing off your ant's test tube with a cotton bud, collecting the ants in the foraging area with another test tube, and then drilling a hole in your foraging area for the additional tubing. If you don't know where to get clear tubing, you can try and get it at either your local DIY store or online. I will leave a link down below if you wish to check out where I got mine. So after plugging your new nest and foraging area together with tubing, you have now successfully set up a new home for your ants and given them plenty of room to grow. Now comes the fun part. It is time to introduce your colony to their new setup. But there are some variables you need to firstly consider. If the nest you have acquired has a single entry hole, which is currently plugged into the foraging area, you will want to place your test tube, which has your colony inside, back into the foraging area along with the other captured ants. If the nest has 2 entry holes, with one being occupied by the foraging area, I would recommend plugging your test tube into the other entry hole and then releasing the captured ants into the foraging area. Both types of nests work effectively, but having more than one entry hole just means that your ants can discover their new nest earlier. To make your new nest more appealing to your colony, you will want to firstly dampen it slightly and then cover it over. The amount of moisture you add to the nest entirely depends on the ant species you have. Some ants from tropical regions like nests with high humidity, whereas other ants from dry and arid regions prefer low humidity. Just be sure to research where your ants are from and what humidity they require. Now you just have to wait patiently for your ants to move into their new nest. There are many ways of speeding up this process. If you want to check them out, I have created a video specifically on moving ants into a new nest. If you fancy watching it, I'll leave a link for it in the description. But in reality, it can take under an hour for your ants to move in, or a few months. You can never really tell. It just depends on your ants. So if it has been a couple of days or weeks, don't start to panic. It probably just means that right now your ants prefer the test tube to your new nest. But eventually the test tube will run out of water and your ants will be forced to find a new home. Once they move in, it can be quite satisfying, knowing that you have raised your ants from a single queen to a now established ant colony. From here, you will want to continue to feed your ants and hydrate their nest, and as time goes on, further expand your setup. Some ant colonies can grow into the thousands and sometimes millions, and some ant queens can live up to 30 years, so be prepared for your ants' increasing appetites and room requirements. If you have got to this point with your ant colony, I can safely say you are no longer a beginner ant keeper, for you have successfully raised an ant colony. I really hope you enjoyed this series, guys, and if you have any questions, be sure to write them down in the comments section below. And as always, I will see you in the next one.